all set. You want to get started?
Okay, I'll go ahead and get us started. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us, or good afternoon, rather. We wanted to update you on where we are at so far with the housing needs assessment for Norwalk. We'll let you know what we've been doing, what we're working on now, and where we're going over the coming weeks. It won't be a very long meeting. We won't keep you too long, but we thought it's important at this point you just have a sense of what we've learned so far and how we've learned it. Let me load up this presentation. Okay, so as you know, our needs assessment includes both a quantitative and a qualitative research process. And the qualitative piece, collecting insights and observations, comes from conducting roundtables. And we facilitated two of those, one with city staff, which was really helpful, and also a second one, which was with a combination of housing and social service providers. Both of those happened at the end of November, beginning of December. We also conducted two formal community listening sessions. One was held in person, and the second one was a virtual one. And there also was a pop-up event as well that happened in early December. And at those sessions, we got some good information, and I'll present to you preliminarily what we learned from those community listening sessions. Concurrently, we began the process of conducting stakeholder interviews, and we're continuing to talk with folks. We've had in-depth conversations with the planning department, the redevelopment agency. We've reached out to housing and social service providers and developers, a real estate broker, to be able to get anecdotal as well as quantitative information about the current state of the market, including really good data on inventory and transactions, absorption rates. We've reached out to some of you, and you may not have gotten back to us, and that's okay. We know you're busy, so it's not too late. And if we haven't reached out to you and you'd love to have some one-on-one time with us, we'd appreciate it. We know this is a good forum too for being able to share ideas, but sometimes it's that one-on-one conversation that helps us better understand the institutional landscape. And then lastly, we also have a survey that you participated in and gave us feedback on as we drafted it in December. We also came to learn that the redevelopment agency had been planning their own survey. And so they've asked us to coordinate our survey with their survey, which is in production this week. And they're expecting to launch it soon. It does prolong our timeline a bit because we won't get the survey results at the earliest until the beginning of March. And then when we do, we'll take those results and we'll integrate them into our housing needs assessment and have our document, ready for you in time for the ULI event toward the end of the month of March. Michelle, did you or Steve want to add anything about the survey and the coordination aspects of it beyond what I had mentioned?
Only thing oops, sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
No, nothing from me. I think you covered the bases there.
Yeah, I just have a little bit of background for folks. The redevelopment agency was planning on doing a survey, and then Michelle and Kevin, whoever else was on, the Tiffany perhaps too, if you recall the intent of that. But my recollection was that they were looking at just getting more of a broader public survey, and they were using an outside firm that helps with analytics and surveying to get a sense of people's perceptions on development and the types of developments and those kind of things. I think that could be helpful just because it seems like we hear about development. We only hear from a certain group that does not want any development. So maybe this can help reach a broader audience. And the idea would be that the concerns and questions that our survey was trying to achieve would get incorporated into their survey, which I think helps in preventing, okay, I just saw this survey from the redevelopment agency. Now we have one coming out from the city. It's better to coordinate and makes it, definitely streamlines the process and probably leads to broader participation. But I think that's kind of the broader intent of things.
Thanks, Steve. So with that, I'm going to move on to sharing with you what we have started to learn from our outreach efforts, and also just to kind of go ahead,
Kevin, I
please.
did have one question. Yes,
Please.
related to the community listening sessions, are you continuing to do those that outreach? I know I had
Yes.
recommended
And-
a couple of organizations that I thought would provide some valuable input and feedback to the plan, and I don't know if that has taken place. No, I just want to know if you're continuing those outreach efforts.
Toward the end of this short presentation, we were going to talk about next steps, including moving forward on more listening efforts and outreach efforts. So maybe just hold off just
Okay.
for a few slides, and then we'll loop back to that. And Tiffany's going to talk about what she's got on her plate for the coming weeks, and then we could fold in, Greg, to your suggestions. But the short of it is not too late, and absolutely, and very much welcome the opportunity to do more outreach.
Very good. Thank you.
For sure. But so what we've learned so far, I'm going to present to you the questions that we asked the community when we went out. We tried to target them, and of course, as happens in every community listening session, people are always kind of answering all questions simultaneously. But just to give them a type of structure, we asked, a forthright question about, well, who are we housing? Who are we talking about as the targeted community here when we are developing Norwalk housing policies? And what we heard in the listening sessions were a lot of people talking about the groups who are especially challenged in terms of being able to find housing in Norwalk, whether they be younger people with limited income or younger families trying to buy a home for the first time, or larger families who need larger units. We heard a lot from people saying that if they are working in Norwalk, they would want to be able to live in Norwalk rather than traveling for a long distance. And then we also just heard about a growing senior population or individuals with particular disabilities, or even those who are housing insecure and potentially or currently lacking in a place of habitat. And so we take this information, and then we also do our own quantitative number crunching to try and get at who is in our population. And we begin to look at the demographic trends and what that implies about housing needs. And I'm not telling you things here that you don't already know, but it's helpful for us to kind of synthesize it and put the quantitative and qualitative against each other. So, for example, looking at the growth of the population in Norwalk and how it has outpaced over the last decade the growth in Fairfield County and Connecticut, and no doubt, of course, contributed to the issues of undersupply. It's often thought that, the changing age demographics of a community have a big effect on housing needs. And so we wanted to see over the last 10 years how your community has changed in age. And to be honest, it's actually stayed relatively stable, although there has been an increase in your over 65 population, which has added pressures on households who may want to downsize and look for 2-bedroom apartments, for example. But I have to say, I think the most substantive change when we look at how this community who we're housing has changed is really in the income levels. And you can probably make out in that lower table that, the median income for Norwalk over the last 10 years grew by 16% compared to only 15% for Bridgeport or 3% for Connecticut. And I should note that I adjusted these numbers to reflect inflation, that those 2012 numbers I'm showing you have been corrected for 2022 values. So you can really see the way in which there's a changing socioeconomic composition here too, which is both affecting and affected by housing prices.
Hey, Kevin, do you know, on that income, do you have that data for, just be curious to see what Stamford was and maybe some of the surrounding towns from us, what they're at? I don't know if you have that data anywhere.
I do. Yeah, I don't have it handy, but I can certainly, if you're interested in having more peer data, Steve, like to kind of see other cities, it's very easy to add it. Strangely enough, what's not easy to add is Fairfield County because they have yet to report their 22 data, which was supposed to be published months and months ago. So, but the peer cities, it'd be very easy for us to take a look at that too and see. So Stamford and whatever other ones you want. And by the way, if as I'm talking, anyone wants to interrupt and ask a question, or alternatively just raise a analytical query that you think, while we're thinking about this, I hope you guys are looking into X, kind of just like Steve just did. We welcome that. You can put it in the chat, or you can just, blurt it out. We're a small enough group, so feel free to interrupt.
I had fun. Have you looked at levers, right, from Norwalk? Because that's been a real trend that we've been hearing of people feeling they've just been priced out of the city and have left. And I don't know if we have any data on if that trend of, who's, percentagely people leaving the city had changed in the last, so many years.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Michelle, because it did come up in the community listening sessions. Obviously, not so much in terms of I'm at the meeting after having left Norwalk, right? Because if you left Norwalk, you weren't at the meeting, which suggests the limitations of community listening, for example. We're not going to hear from those who were priced out of the community. But what we do have, and what will be in the report, is data that shows when people came to Norwalk. Like, what was the time in which they occupied a certain housing unit? Was it 2021? Was it 2018? And from that, you can start to examine what is the ratio between longer term residents and newer residents. And it's limited, the degree to which you can intuit displacement out of it, but it does tell you about the changing composition of the community in terms of the duration of their time in Norwalk. And that's census data, and we do have it available for Norwalk, so it'll be in the assessment. Okay, the other question that Tiffany pitched to the community was, does the current housing stock meet your needs? Again, no surprises. We heard broadly from the folks that attended our meetings that Norwalk has become unaffordable, that those who were homeowners wouldn't be able to buy a home today. There was a lot of concern that the newly constructed housing that had been built over the last 5 to 10 years was housing that was really for people outside of Norwalk rather than current residents. And that, moreover, this is an observation that was repeatedly made, was that the idea that new housing supply would have a trickle-down effect by enabling existing residents to access housing that was now made available as a result of increased supply, and that increased supply would potentially have a downward effect on housing prices, did not come to fruition, right? That was something that people said in many different ways at the meetings, that they felt that the new supply did not enhance the supply of housing or the affordability, and that it may have made it worse, pointing to rents continuing to go up and the unavailability of inventory on the market. So we take in these observations, right? And then we start to look at, well, what exactly is going on the market, right? When someone is searching for housing. And so just as a teaser of what's to come, in our market analysis here, we're looking at here two graphs, one for the median rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in September. I always like to look at what the median rents are in September because it's a common time of year of transition, and
Kevin,
observe how the rents have changed from 1950 in 2014 to 2825 in 2023.
Kevin,
Tiff?
yeah, could you put your screen on like full slideshow?
Yeah,
Like, I think it'd be easier for, like, it's just small for, beautiful. Now I think everyone could
yeah,
probably see
is it better?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry about that. Should have done that earlier.
Kevin,
Yeah.
I had a quick question.
Yep.
Are you collecting any data on who's actually moving into the new developments? Because often you hear from the public there for other people, but when you talk to developers, it's often you're actually getting a high percentage of people within Norwalk moving into those developments. So it'd be interesting to sort of either see if that is truthful or just a rumor in all of this, because it's just a question of where is that housing stock? Who's that housing stock supporting?
Yeah, I don't expect that we will get specific numbers for that, but what I do think we'll get, Nick, is as we talk to developers, the property managers of those larger multifamily developments, we'll ask them that question, and hopefully, at least anecdotally, we'll be able to get some intelligence there about, approximately what percentage of your
that makes
applicants are
sense.
coming from Norwalk, or how many. They're very unlikely to give us a spreadsheet, but we can get at that question through the interviews.
Thank you.
Sure.
Kevin,
And then, yeah, go ahead, please. Adam.
sorry, I had a quick question about what's the source for the median rent? Because it doesn't seem to quite match the fair market rent, which HUD does as a as a 40th percentile study.
Yeah, so I got these numbers off of RentHop. I also called a broker who just sent me a new batch of data that he had access to. And so I don't know what his source of data is that he's got for his median rents, but we were going to compare them together and take a look at it. And if you've got other data sources too, I'd be happy to take a
I'll
look
send
at
you
that as well.
the federal government's fair market rent. Now, the fair market rent, I will say, is the Stanford Norwalk metro area. So maybe this was more precise to Norwalk, but again, it doesn't quite add up to what we've been seeing.
Do the numbers seem to be higher than what they should be?
Looking more at the trends, not the specific numbers. It often depends on what you're using. If you're using, the data that's on MLS versus the data that, a lot of the private developments aren't necessarily on MLS, and then we can talk about it. I'll send you what the fair market rent is, though, because it just doesn't quite match up.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. This is not fair market rent for a region. It is very specific to Norwalk. It's listing data, right? And one defect of the listing data is also that sometimes it excludes the data from the multifamily rentals where they don't always report. Like sometimes they'll put like a tokenistic unit to represent their total inventory, but they don't actually put all of their units out there, so it doesn't capture that. But the dynamic, the changing, the trend is something that we should be able to get at by maybe looking at a variety of data sources. What we are discerning so far is that the rents are going up, right? I mean, this is sort of like what this is suggesting. I don't have an explanation for the spike in 2016, but we'll probe more deeply. And this is where it's really helpful to talk to the brokers because they have a lot of firsthand knowledge of what was going on in the market and at different points. The data that's
Kevin,
in
I
the,
think
yeah.
Nick
Oh,
has a
Nick,
question.
sorry, I didn't see your sign. Yep, please go ahead, Nick.
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm the only Nick here. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I saw the little thing, the hand up, so I didn't know if that was still a new question.
All good. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure. The data below for median sales price from 2015 to 2023, that is from an MLS powered data source. It's one of them, but we'll be comparing it against other ones, and it's showing here the rise in single family home prices from 413,000 in 2015 to 700,000. So again, both rental, the data that we've collected so far for both rental and sales shows a significant increase in prices. I didn't adjust these prices yet for inflation. They're really just presented in the value that they were in the time. There's something helpful about seeing what the prices were as they were understood by people on the market at that time. But even when you correct for inflation, it does show that the change in prices have outpaced the change in inflation.
Are you able to match that up with the, be interesting to like match that up with the income increases and then look at the, try to get a sense of who's coming in and who's driving that sales? I don't know if the census data gets to that kind of finite level of, you know, who's coming in and when they came in, and then is that the big drive, are their incomes one of the big drivers, and then that being the big driver of the increase in the home prices?
Right. So it's a bit tricky to track shifts in income over time, but we can check the changes in median income, which I think I have on the next slide, and I'll show that to you. Let me see if it's here.
I think in the prior slide you had that one, right?
Was it in the prior slide? Yeah, sorry, in the prior slide here. So, you know, we can look at the shifts in the median income, and we can lay it alongside the shifts in price points to kind of get at the way in which, you know, there's a higher renting capacity of households moving in, so the market can sustain higher prices. It's difficult, Steve, though, to deduce, you know, exactly what income class is buying or renting which apartments, right, and bringing it down. So maybe in a cruder fashion I can get at that, but not so easily in terms of really being able to look and say, you know, these home prices were inflated because the demographic of buyers making between 150 and 200,000 were more proactive in buying homes. It would be nice if we had it, but it's not easy to deduce that from the data. But I certainly think that it's a good question that we can continue to talk to the brokerage community about, you know, who've gone through the paths and know the financials of the buyers, and who can speak to that aspect.
Yeah, and my last point before I stop talking there is also in terms of if these are folks from outside Norwalk moving into Norwalk, what's driving them, or what then made them choose Norwalk? If that's, you know, that might be realtor driven, or I don't know if you can gain from a survey question or something.
Right. Sort of like, what are the market fundamentals that help to explain the 5% increase in the change in the population, and a change in the population, which has been occurring kind of steadily and not just in reaction to COVID pandemic, inspiring many New York City households to move outside of the city, for example, right? So I think in the housing needs assessment, we'll talk about what some of those drivers have been in terms of directing the population to Norwalk. And then the other question that we asked was, what type of housing should be built to serve housing needs? And kind of a general framing of the responses to this question were, Norwalk is kind of it has only two types of housing. It either has single family homes, or it has these outrageously expensive multifamily apartment rentals. This is what we heard from multiple people. And so the coda to that was build more duplexes, townhomes, more larger units with at least 2 bedrooms. We heard a lot of folks asking for ADU units, micro units, smaller units, and supportive and transitional housing. And so we're taking those needs in, and, you know, continuing to talk with other folks and stakeholders about it. I think we'd all love to know exactly how many of these types of units we would actually need to solve the unmet housing needs in Norwalk, which is hard to do, but you know, we can at least go in a little bit more deeply about these units and why they're desired and needed. And then kind of also take a look at where we are right now in terms of what the existing housing is and how it could potentially change. Housing tenure, as we talked about in the listening sessions, has shifted quite considerably over the last decade, with home ownership falling rather considerably and the proportion of renters rising. Still a very strong ratio of multifamily to single family homes. And the majority of the housing stock having 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms. And then the last question we asked, it isn't really a housing needs question. It's more of a question that speaks to the policy and strategies that AKRF will be pursuing when they sort of take the reins from us and continue to develop the policy framework and the pathway forward. But we still ask this question because sometimes when you ask people about the solutions, you can rear end of like finding out also what are the unmet needs. How would they solve the problem? And so what they asked for when we pitched them this question was, and these are all pretty obvious and expected, more housing at a range of price points and better paths for both homeownership and rehabilitation of homes owned by residents. There's a lot of discussion that affordable housing has a stigma in Norwalk and that there needs to be kind of a re-education process so that concepts like increasing density or accessory dwelling units are not met with community opposition. Not a whole lot of in-depth recommendations came out about changes in zoning or planning initiatives beyond sort of just saying, make sure that whatever you do going forward in terms of planning and zoning aligns with fulfilling housing needs. Some suggested more creative partnerships with developers where the city becomes more proactive in working with the development community as part of a strategy for increasing supply. And then we heard from a number of folks about the value of linking new housing developments, their location, to the presence of transit or upgrading transit wherever new housing is built. So those are the suggestions that came forth. There's a lot more work that's going to be done both analytically on this over the next couple months and certainly as we get the survey data. And we have a number of additional next steps related to outreach. I'm going to let you, Tiffany, kind of walk us through what's
Sure.
on tap for the coming weeks.
Sure. So I have Michelle's on the line right now. So I think we're moving forward tomorrow with a little bit of outreach at Open Doors to both some of our and English as a second language course offering there, where we're going to pop up and facilitate conversation there. And then that afternoon, have more of a presence at Open Doors at the social. So we'll be doing some outreach tomorrow. On Friday, we're going to do another presentation to the Norwalk community providers to receive, similar to the presentation right now, to get some direct feedback and suggestions from the providers, and then see if there's any other suggestions they have regarding outreach. Michelle and Steve from the city are working with me to try to coordinate an event at one of the senior lunches or senior centers to get that perspective. And we'll be doing the finalization and release of the surveys, the survey coming up soon. We continue stakeholder interviews. Greg, I know you had asked us to reach out and we did. So we're waiting to hear back from Brenda. Both Kevin and I did reach out to Brenda to either both to have a one-on-one conversation and then to see if we could host something. And then I do have on my list also to reach out to the Minister Fellowship. So I will be doing that in the next week. And then finally, with the pop-up events, I just want to let you know, because we only had a few of you eager to take boards, but it's a really simple process. So it's good that we're on right now. But if you have a space or a location, there's essentially two boards. They're these poster boards that have a question on top that just says sort of what's your housing needs. And we provide the little post-it notes and a pen, and it sort of hangs there. And it's also in Spanish, and you can just literally put it up and people will put their suggestions on the post-it note and stick it on the poster board. Michelle, I don't know if both Michelles, I think you both had led a little pop-up with the boards. So we drop them off to you, and then you can leave them up for a week, a day, a few hours, whatever it is. So as people are walking by, they sort of can participate on a board. So if anyone is interested in it, again, it's quite simple. There's not much you need to do except let me know when you want a board, and then let me know when to pick up the boards. We will do that. So feel free to reach out to me. I think you all have my email address.
I have a question that I have no idea what the answer is. I was just looking at data on Norwalk recently, and I think something like 30% of Norwalk residents are foreign born. Do we have any sort of strategy around getting input from the foreign born population? I know it's a lot of Haitian, as well as folks from a variety of Spanish speaking countries. Are we hitting up that population for our needs assessment?
So that's what I've been working a little bit with Michelle from Open Doors on. We also are going to try to translate one of our active boards in Haitian Creole, I believe. And then also, I think one of the things I'm going to circle back with regarding the survey was that the surveys were going to be done in a couple of languages as well. So that would be a great way to get input. So the hope would be that's right now the best way. If there's others with suggestions, again, we're always happy to take that. But Adam, right now, that's sort of how we're handling it. Michelle?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we did the board with the Post-it notes at ESL registration last week, which, like several people did put things on. And so I do think that they're really helpful. And once the survey's out, that's going to be a real push of ours because we serve a significant Haitian Creole population, as well as Spanish-speaking populations from a variety of countries. So that way we're really trying to, wrap around that population.
Great. Thank you both. Yeah, thank you.
I think the events is a great idea, but we really need to look at the city calendar of events and be intentional in terms of getting these pop-up items at these events to capture the input of the community. For example, there was 3 large events in Norwalk on Monday for MLK Day. Several people came out, but I didn't know about the pop-up to say we should have one of these at each of these events where there was several people from the community who came out, who I'm sure would have gave. So we have to be more intentional at looking at what are the community events that are taking place where people come out, and then be there to capture their input on the spot.
Yeah, no, thank you, Greg. And so we're in close contact with the city, and we'll keep, looking for more events. And as all of you, I rely on you as well, just to let me know if you see something coming up you're interested in or that I can assist with. Please let me know. But yeah, no, thank you, Greg. And we're sorry to have missed out on things that were happening on MLK Day. And we will keep moving forward. We can keep doing these. Yeah. And again, some of them are very simple. So some of the events, we'll need a person there for a few hours. And if our staff can do it, we will. But then again, like how Michelle let it over at Open Doors, it's easy to do, or alternatively, the board can just stay there by itself and doesn't need anyone, monitoring it, so. Okay. So I will keep everyone in the loop regarding any future things happening, but those are some of our steps right now. We will, as soon as that survey is ready to go, of course, you guys will be some of the first to see that. So anything else, Kevin, or from city staff, Steve, Michelle?
No, okay. I think we'll probably come back to you. Maybe we'll, maybe have an email update, but we'll also come back to you once we've got the survey results. I think that's going to be really helpful to our efforts. And again, if you have a thought and you want to just email it to us, that's great. Or if you want to just arrange a time for us to talk on the phone, we really welcome that. It's helpful. So. But with that, we'll let you all go unless Steve or Michelle, there's anything else you want to add before we close up the meeting.
No, I'll circle back with Michelle on a few things and we'll get back to you guys, but nothing big, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.